Guys, yeah, this is episode 1, first episode of the podcast that is, as the time of recording, has no name. We'll probably have one in the future.
You guys will know the name before we do.
Yeah, you'll read it in the title before we're aware of it. Very brief introduction. Myself, my name's Adam. I'm the owner of Alliance Sydney Jiu-Jitsu with my wife, Black Belt under Fabio Gurgel, the head coach of Alliance. And sitting across from me is Special K.
Special K, aka Kieren.
Yeah.
So I'm a white belt under Adam Charles from Alliance. I've been training jiu-jitsu for 10 months now? About to approach the big one.
I think you started right after the first sort of COVID outbreak, right? For here in Sydney, when everything shut down and then we reopened after that initial lockdown, that's when you started, right?
Yeah, that was in September of 2020.
Yeah.
I have it in my calendar.
Yeah. I remember when I first started training, I remember it was it was a reference point of kind of how good someone was, or, you'd be rolling with someone and maybe you beat them or they beat you, and you'd always ask each other how long you been training for?
Yep.
I remember I had it written down as well, the date and the year that I started training. I mean, I can't remember what it, over a decade ago now, but I remember I had it noted down as well. I was like, this is when I started training, and then
it makes you feel better if you lose.
Yeah, a little bit, you lose to something. Oh, I've been training for 18 months. You're like, oh yeah, cool. I've only been training for 6 months,
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big dog.
Yeah.
We do that in the white belt divisions. You probably did the same in competitions. Like the common thing on the podium is to say, oh, how long you been training? How long you been training? Like, oh, just 3 months, 4 months. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's such a passive sort of big dog maneuver.
Yeah, it is, right? And then especially if I've only been training for 3 months and the other dude's been training for 2 years and you smoked him or something.
Yeah, exactly, man. You're like, oh, fuck, you're practically a blue belt.
Yeah.
Oh man, the ego is strong.
Obviously, we're going to be talking about jiu-jitsu related topics. So as Kieren briefly mentioned, he's a white belt, but if you haven't met Kieren in person, he's a beast of a white belt. He's also a fully fledged nutritionist, ex-bodybuilder, right?
Yeah.
So he's very fit and capable. So we're going to have a lot of banter between us.
Oh yeah. So let's get into it. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about a bit of COVID and training, and maybe we can touch on, because Adam, as he mentioned, is a gym owner. Maybe we can touch on how he sort of progressed the training to an online space, and some pros and cons, and how to get the most out of that training online. Yeah,
because I think it's the impact COVID has had on everyone, but on the jiu-jitsu community and the business side of jiu-jitsu, running a gym, even just the hobby side of jiu-jitsu, being able to train jiu-jitsu, it's going to be different where you are in the world, right? If we go back, at the time of this recording, maybe 18 months ago was when shit first started hitting the fan with COVID, right? So countries like Australia and New Zealand pretty quickly closed borders and everything, went into lockdown, and so it impacted jiu-jitsu heavily. You couldn't train at all. Other countries like the US, depending on the state you were in, they just had a whatever attitude.
It's a bit potluck, isn't it?
Yeah. So, there were some states, I think some more of the southern states of the US, I could be wrong, but, I know from being connected to other Alliance affiliates around the world, there were some states in the US where, despite the outrageous numbers and deaths, they were still open, and people just didn't care. They just continued to train. So how it impacted jiu-jitsu and your ability to train and learn is going to really depend where you are in the world. But for us here in Australia, it has been really hard because Melbourne, for example, they had it really rough last year. They were locked down. I think it was almost 6 months. So it was 6 months you couldn't train, right? Your gyms were closed. Sydney had a 3-month one. And since then, Melbourne's gone in and out of lockdown. Sydney's had a second lockdown as well. so depending where you are, it's been really hard to continue to train.
Yeah. Yeah, that does, particularly for someone like myself that's sort of, effectively just starting. It can be a challenge to maintain the rage but then again, like once you catch the jiu-jitsu bug, it's sort of becomes a bit of a lifestyle. It's really weird, isn't it? Like
it does for sure. Like I always say that to new people getting into jiu-jitsu, that once you get bitten by the bug or you fall down the rabbit hole, like it becomes an addiction, like a healthy addiction. Some people get into it for exercise, right? But then once you get into the sport of jiu-jitsu, you do it because you enjoy it. It just happens to also be a type of exercise. I mean, the analogy I always use is it's like surfing. Not many people go for a surf with the mentality, oh, I've got to go work out.
Yeah.
No, they go for a surf because it's a ton of fun and it also happens to be exercise. And, if you get bitten by the jiu-jitsu bug, it's the same thing, right? Like not often do you go to training thinking, oh, I've got to go to the gym and work out. You go because you love it and you have fun, and it is also a type of exercise. Of course, if you're preparing for competitions or something, it becomes a bit more of a grind. But
it's a means to an end, isn't it?
Yeah, but going back to what you just said, for sure, definitely harder for newer people who just got into it and now it's been taken away from them. We have some students that obviously because we both train in the same gym, but we have students newer than you who have gotten into it and then now it's just been taken away from them. And from a business point of view, it's a fine line, right? Because you could lose those students.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of, the jiu-jitsu culture can be a little bit toxic sometimes. And I don't want to say there's not rapport and everything built between instructor or gym owner and students, but there is. But the bottom line, like it is a business, right? Yeah. So in terms of trying to keep your doors open, it sucks to lose those students as students because of the friendships you might have built, but also as customers, right? Yeah. To help you pay your bills. And so it's a dangerous time to have students who have just been bitten by the bug, so to speak, and then you have to close and reopen and maybe they don't come back, right? So little off topic of what we're trying to talk about, but it is definitely hard for people who are trying to stay connected with jiu-jitsu. And that's why now we only have to learn online is kind of the only option we have at the moment during lockdown.
I suppose that's a good segue into learning online. Jiu-jitsu is a sport that requires a partner. It's like, unfortunately, most of what you do in jiu-jitsu, unless you're doing some solo drills or you're going through some basics, if you're trying to drill something or you're trying to roll, you need someone else. So in terms of learning online, in your experience as a black belt in jiu-jitsu, have you done, like, say for example, you could train. How much of your training would be, or how much of your study, I should say, would be using an online resource like an instructional or an online platform or watching matches?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly watching matches is always good because it's just more exposure to the sport, right? You can learn a lot from watching. Also, if you find it entertaining, why not watch jiu-jitsu matches? Like, there's plenty of people who watch particular sports that they don't even participate in. Plenty of people watch football games and they don't play football.
Or
UFC or whatever, right? So if you enjoy watching the sport of jiu-jitsu, watch matches. It's not going to be harmful to your jiu-jitsu at all. In terms of, let's say I could train and even not being a black belt, right? My current situation is a little bit different. Like, yeah, I'm a black belt and I'm a gym owner. So I do a lot of online study, but it's like self-study. I don't have, I still have direct contact with Fabio, but I'm not in the gym with him every day anymore. I used to be in the gym every day with Fabio, Michael Lange, Bernardo Faria, all these guys who I could learn from on a daily basis. I don't have that anymore. So a lot of my study is self-study. So it's online watching other athletes compete, watching other instructionals. It's on the mat, you know, drilling with a partner, brainstorming, trying to solve the problem of jiu-jitsu. When I was a lower belt, when I was a blue and purple belt, and people used to ask me, you know, or send me links to videos or instructionals to watch, I would never watch them. You know, I was so inundated with so much information just in the gym training anyway, right? Like I didn't need to watch all these videos. Like I trained twice a day, every day. You know, every class was new, different techniques. I mean, I was learning or being shown 6 to 10 different techniques every day from current black belt world champions. Like I didn't need any more information. I was already getting more information than I could process anyway, right? So I think if we ignore lockdown for a second, how much learning should be done online? Well, I think if you're training at a good gym, you should be getting enough information directly from that, you know, from your instructor anyway. Like, let's say, for example, okay, like you could arguably the top best gym in Australia at the moment is run by Lachlan and Livia Giles, right? Absolute MMA in St Kilda,
Yep.
I believe.
Yep.
You know, for those who aren't aware of Lachlan, shame on you, right? But Lachlan is
Where have you been?
yeah. Where have you been? Lachlan's a mega superstar, like coach to Craig Jones as well. Absolute legend and in the sport on his own, let alone in Australia. He's definitely like one of the top names, you know, up there. But, you know, if you trained at Lachlan's gym, like Lachlan has heaps of instructionals out that you can go and buy and learn from. But like if you were a student at Lachlan's gym, would you then go buy I don't know, like an Andre Galvao instructional? Like, man, like you've got a guy who is going to be on a daily basis giving you way more information than you can process anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So I think if you ignore lockdown and your gym's open and you train at a gym that does a good job, right, like you shouldn't need all this extra online content. Don't get me wrong, it's great, right? Especially if there's something specific you want. And because no one person knows everything. Even Lockie, for example, right? Like incredibly talented in the gi. No gi is what he's most famous for, leg entanglements and all that sort of stuff. You know, could you learn some spider guard or deep half guard or whatever from Lachlan? Yeah, of course you could, but like, is it his specialty? No. And, you know, and it would be ignorant of him to think that he can teach a you know, deep half guard better than Bernardo Faria or something like that. So of course, if there's something specific you want, you can go down that route, but it's going to depend on how experienced you are, right? If you're a white belt, I don't think it's that necessary, right? If you're a purple or brown, you know, maybe you might be wanting to learn a bit more, something specific that your own instructor isn't, you know, it's not his specialty. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you think this is relevant for someone? Say for example, you're a white belt and you train 2 to 3 times per week. Do you think supplementing the time that maybe you can't get to training for whatever reason, life or insert reason here, do you think that supplementing some of the classes you may have quote unquote missed with online training is not as good, but better than not doing it?
Better than doing nothing?
Yeah, better than doing nothing.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think the pitfall that some white belts have is they almost use the online learning, or they use YouTube as a, you know, they're kind of just looking for that one technique, or they're looking for that almost that pay to win option, you know? And so I think any instructor, I'm sure, has been through this where they have students come in, oh, hey, I saw this technique on YouTube or on Instagram. What do you think, you know? So it's a dangerous route for white belts to go down. If you had some support in terms of what online content you were digesting, then yeah, for sure. Like if you can only train 2-3 times a week because of life, right? But then you've got time to watch some videos and stuff throughout the week, for sure. But I think it needs to be the appropriate thing, you know? online, not just jiu-jitsu content, but just online stuff is super clickbaity, and particularly if you look at like Instagram techniques for jiu-jitsu, it's all about likes, right?
Yeah.
Like if
it looks flashy.
Exactly. So if I post a video, Instagram video of me doing a cross collar choke from close guard, right, or a scissor sweep, right, maybe not going to get that many likes and shares and comments. Like it's not flashy. But you post some flying bearing bolo backward upside down armbar Barado Plata thing, it looks awesome and people go, oh, wow, check that out. And I'm not saying that doesn't work, it's cool, but I mean, it's all about the likes, right?
Yeah. So I suppose a big part of that message is where you're getting your information or where you're getting your content is really important.
Yeah, for sure. Like I often, when white belts ask me, oh, I saw this online, what do you think? They try show me the technique, they can't remember how to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, let me find it on my phone or whatever. I often just ask them, who's it from?
Yeah.
And if it's a credible source, I go, yeah, it's good to go. So someone asks me, I saw this, it's from, Keenan, Keenan Cornelius. I'm like, yeah, man, dude's legit. Cool. Yeah. Oh, I saw it on
BJJ Cool Guy number 5.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, yeah, maybe it works. I need to see it, right? But I often just ask, where's the source? But yeah, like I just said, I think people go, particularly white belts, just they're looking for that, that one move that's going to make them better on the mats or whatever. And I mean, it's just not the reality of the sport. It's so diverse and complicated, and your opponent only needs to change like one grip or one movement or whatever, and that specific technique may not work, right? If you're looking for some golden ticket, I would maybe lean towards like concepts opposed to actual techniques, right? Because the concept of, positional fighting or like understanding, let's say leg locks, for example, you need to understand the importance of keeping the knee line and things like that, opposed to learning all the million different intricacies, of a particular technique. And that's the other problem with online techniques as well. For when you look at an instructional opposed to how you learn in the class, when you learn in the class, and if you're teaching lower belts like white belts, you don't want to overwhelm them with information, because people can't take in that much information. I'm not going to pretend I know how the brain works, right? But I know it's something like you can take in, 3 to 5 pieces of information or something like at a time when you're learning something new. So when you're teaching a white belt a new technique, or anyone for that matter, a new technique, you give a few details of the technique and that's enough for them to go and drill and practice the technique. And then as time goes on and, there's another class a few weeks or months down the track, that technique comes up again, there's going to be extra details.
Yeah.
But with instructionals, it's supposed to be this tool where I'm going to teach you every possible thing you need to know about this technique, which is great, right? But it's often for a white belt who can't sift through, some of the information, or what I guess I'm trying to say, for someone who every detail they're giving is a new piece of information, right? It's too much. Like they're learning a technique and they've got to try remember these 100 details. If you're a bit more advanced, like myself, for example, like if I watched some details of a really cool instructional from Mikey Musameshi not that long ago. Like a lot of the information he's giving is already knowledge that I have. So when he gets to those key little details, like they're the chunks that I can take. But for someone less experienced, every word he's saying is new. It's too much, man, to take in.
So in that case, if you were going to study off an instructional, would you say that it would be better to select one that you're interested in, maybe select one that your coach, your mentor, your professor has put you onto of a credible source, all that, watch it through, pick 1 or 2 things to start implementing, and then as you progress and as you run into problems, reference back to the instructional. So instead of watching 10, just stick to the one.
Yeah, I mean, it's you need to, it being a physical sport, you can't just do all this theory study and then expect that you're instantly going to be able to pass right? The practical part of the test, if you will, right? You can't just read a bunch of cookbooks and then think you're going to be an expert at making whatever dish without actually practicing making the dish, right? So it's a similar sort of thing. I'll use you as an example, right?
Here we go.
So
this will be edited out.
yeah. Kieren has become quite the natural at getting triangled, right? But it's not any fault of his own. It's just part of the learning process, right? So at the moment, Kieren is working a lot on pressure passing. So that's, double unders, over unders, right? This really sort of imposing passing style, staple passing, all that. But as a result, at the moment it's leaving him open to a lot of triangles, right? So it's something where we'll add a detail to Kieren's passing, right? And he makes it one step further, but then his opponent brings another line of defense and then he ends up back in the triangle, and then we address that. And so we're constantly, in this case, like I'm the instructional, right? This isn't an instructional Kieren's following. It's just a back and forth between him and I as a instructor and a student. And every day it's getting better. And every day, like, he's getting less and less triangled, getting, passing more often, or getting, against some of his training partners who are really relentless with their triangle and omoplata attacks. Jonas, right? Getting, maybe not passing in, but also not getting triangled, or going from getting triangled 5 times in one roll to only getting triangled 1 time. Because sometimes as well, like, it's not like the student, in this case yourself, or the person watching an instructional or whatever, has forgotten the particular detail, but they just haven't developed the sensitivity or the reflex or the muscle memory to do it when it's actually happening, right? It's not, it's not only the theory. People refer, in Brazil, jiu-jitsu is often referred to as a physical game of chess, but I go, well, it's more than that. It's, imagine playing chess, but when you move your piece, your opponent could go, no, and move it back, right? Like, that's what it's like. It's one thing to know, but then when you try to implement it against someone who's trying not to let you, you could look at striking as an example. If boxing was as easy as it is to hit a bag or to hit focus mitts, right? Be pretty easy.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to punch someone in the head who's not letting you punch them while they're simultaneously trying to punch you, it's harder than you think, right?
Yeah, it changes the game completely.
Yeah, and jiu-jitsu is a million times more dynamic. I'm not trying to take anything away from strikers, but
it's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Not trying to shit on strikers, but we're shitting on strikers.
Yeah. I mean, do you, as, let me just flip that question then for a second. Like, how do you feel as a white belt who's exposed to a huge amount of content, right?
Yeah.
You yourself, like, you train 5-6 days a week, and a lot of those days it's twice a day. I'm talking about just jiu-jitsu. I know you do your other training as well, like strength training or whatever.
Yeah.
But just in terms of mat time, you train pretty much 5-6 days a week, once or twice a day on those days. Do you feel the need that you need to go elsewhere online instructionals to get more information?
So I have so many instructionals to watch. Like, I've gotten probably like, I don't even want to publicly admit how many, but it's, in the region of about 10. And I've gone through 2 or 3 of them. So it's a lot of information. Yeah. Now, just to piggyback off something that you said before, you said that when you're teaching white belts, you mentioned, a few details, you try and keep it simplified, and then maybe, fast forward a few weeks, few months, the same technique comes up again. From my position, I learned something the first time, obviously, when you teach it, and I take away maybe 1 or 2 details. If it's something that particularly resonates with me, I try to implement it in my live rolling. Yeah. And then I see that technique again, and all of a sudden a light bulb will go up. like, oh, that's why I have been screwing that technique up. A prime example, the one that I'm
Because it might have been a detail that you were taught but forgot, right?
Oh, 100%. It's a detail that I was taught but forgot. So, for example, hip bump passing. I've been trying to do that movement, sweep, hip bump sweep. I've been trying to do that sweep for so long, and I just could not figure out why it wouldn't work for me. And I was doing something fundamentally completely counterintuitive to the movement, and it was only until I saw it like taught twice or 3 times or something like that that it clicked for me, and now it's changed the game for me. But it was almost like I needed to go away and practice that movement or whatever, insert any other technique here, practice it, and then see it taught again. So like you were mentioning, I could not sift through, I'm not going to imply that I'm a black belt, but like almost it's like confirmation for me. Like, yep, I understand that. Yep, I remember that. Yep. Oh, okay, that's different. That's what I've been screwing up.
Exactly. But yeah, when it's all new, it's too much information, right? Like you can't
100%.
You can't take in.
And we're talking about one technique here. If you, in an instructional, sometimes they go through like 10 techniques and they're different variations. Or if you're watching a Danaher one, it's like 4 or 5 hours. Your favorite man alive.
Don't get me wrong. John Danaher is a mastermind.
Yeah.
But, oh my Lord. Like you either can stomach his instructionals or you can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
But I've actually said this a lot, that I would love to, I wish I had the opportunity to take one of Danaher's just regular classes.
Yeah.
Because surely he can't teach a regular class with the same hours of blah. Because where's the time to do jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
If it's a 1 hour, 2 hour class or whatever. I would like to just do one of his classes to see if it's a little bit more concise, like whatever technique, some details, and then, then off you go. And is it just the fact that the instructionals are trying to give every single detail?
I think that's
why I don't enjoy them.
Yeah.
Add on top of that he's a philosopher and talks a lot like a philosopher does.
Yeah.
It's a bit hard to digest. But if you can stomach a man, dude's a genius.
Yeah. Yeah. He is quite an inspiration, particularly for someone, of my level. Like, these days, a lot of people.
And I've noticed that you've taken a page out of his book, your fashion sense, you wear your rashi everywhere.
No, he's talking shit. Don't trust him. Yeah, but Danaher's definitely he's on another plane, if you will, another level, another thought pattern. Yeah. So I think just circling back to the whole COVID lockdown and the state of affairs, if you will, in jiu-jitsu, which led us down to a bit of online learning. Competitions. So for someone like myself, who I'm trying to compete pretty much as I can in the Sydney scene or just in jiu-jitsu in general.
Yeah.
But at the moment, no one's competing in Sydney, or really no one's competing in New South Wales or Victoria at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's been like that for a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you've just reminded me something that I skipped over before. Yeah, like at the moment, if you can't train at all, right, because what Kieran's just mentioned, not having the ability to compete due to lockdown is definitely going to hamper your progression. But before mentioning that, like if you can't train at all because you're locked down, and like I said at the start of the episode, depends where you are in the world. Places in the US didn't even lock down at all, whereas we did here. Then it's really tough. Right? If you're not allowed to leave your home, you don't have a partner, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, that's tough, right? You're going to watch instructionals, you're going to watch YouTube, you're going to re-reference your notes, right? If you take notes after class, should take notes after class, right? Man, it's going to be hard, right? But there's still potential to learn, especially if you've got a gym who's providing some level of online content, like what we're doing for our students at the moment is we're doing Zoom classes like a lot of gyms are. They're not super jiu-jitsu focused, but we do Zoom classes so we can still interact, talk about jiu-jitsu, stay fit. We're posting online videos, content right? So there's still opportunities to learn, but it's definitely, I mean, it's like, how do you play, if you're locked down, how do you play tennis?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, man, you need a partner, it's really, really hard. Pete, if that sucks. I think competing is incredibly important in your progression for jiu-jitsu. I don't think you need to be a competitor. Like, you might be someone who doesn't like competing and doesn't want to be a competitor. That's fine. But I think if you're committed to progressing in jiu-jitsu, you should compete every now and again. I think not competing, it's no different to, let's say, if you were part of a rugby team or a football team and you just went to training, but you actually never played a game, right? Or tennis again. If you only ever did like tennis drills with a coach, but you never actually like played a match of tennis, right? Like, I mean, you need to compete every now and again. And let's say you might say, oh, but no, I got into jiu-jitsu, not for the sport, for the self-defense. Okay, well then even better reason to compete. If you got into the sport, if you got into jiu-jitsu for the self-defense side of things and you can't handle the stress of a competition when you're in a controlled environment, you can't handle the stress of the confrontation, the adrenaline of competing in jiu-jitsu, man, if you can't handle that, how the hell are you going to handle the stress of if you got in, if you needed, if it was real and you needed to use it for self-defense. So I think it's incredibly important. It sucks that it's taken away from us, with lockdown. Even when, like I said before, particularly Sydney and Melbourne have gone in and out of lockdown. Being like the bigger, more populated cities in Australia, we've gone in and out of lockdown, those two cities. So there were times when Melbourne was in lockdown and Victoria itself had no competitions, but life was normal in Sydney. We were training, competing, right? And then recently it was the opposite. There was still some competitions in Victoria while New South Wales, or mainly metropolitan Sydney, was all shut down. But even when nowhere was in lockdown, IBJJF competitions, for example, none are happening in Australia due to the difficulties with quarantining when you arrive from overseas. You can see.
You're talking about the big ones, like the
well, yeah, I mean,
stuff.
like the Pan Packs, the Sydney Open, the Melbourne Open, right? Like, they've all been canned. And, so if you're trying to make it onto that international scene as a competitor, you don't even have that platform, right? Like, in your case, okay, you're a white belt, you're wanting to compete just to progress, right? Which is, like I said, I think is super important. But if you're like, let's say, for example, you're wanting to go compete in the worlds as a black belt. Let's say me, for example, if I wanted to go fight the worlds as a black belt, you need to score points, right? You need to accumulate points to qualify to fight the worlds as a black belt. And you make those points by ranking in IBJJF competitions. So
that's where the different like leveled competitions come in. Like, what do they refer to them as? Stars? Different star events?
So they have a way to accumulate your points. But what I'm trying to say is, imagine if it was me, I don't have any IBJJF competitions in Australia at the moment, so you wouldn't be able to rank. And B, like, even if money wasn't an issue and I was like, oh, cool, I'll just go do the IBJJF competitions in the US, like, well, then how am I getting there? How am I getting back, right? And then quarantining, like, so it's kind of taken that off the table for pretty much most Australian competitors, right? So it's affecting the jiu-jitsu scene in Australia a lot, not just like the domestic scene. Like, I just mean Australia in terms of, high-level Australian competitors, right? Who typically compete internationally at the Euros, at the Pans, at the Worlds. That's all been compromised because now they don't have the ease of traveling like they usually do. And it's not like they can just go, oh yeah, cool, I'll just get a permanent visa for the US and live there. It's not that easy, right?
Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I suppose with like the competition scene the way it is because of COVID, do you see this affecting the popularity of jiu-jitsu or or maybe the progression of the Australian scene, and not so much like, obviously it's a given that unfortunately it's going to be affecting the higher levels, but just bring it back down to context of like a lower belt, like your white belts, your blue belts. How do you think not being able to compete is going to affect progression at a micro level for individuals?
I mean, I don't think it's really gonna change it at all. You know, like the sport is just growing so much, right? That it's not like interest in the sport is going to die out. I don't think.
Because it's not really connected to competition, is it?
I mean, it is like in terms of the entertainment factor, right? But I don't think on the micro level, like, you know, let's say you as an individual, how much is it going to affect your progression not being able to compete over the next 6 months or something? I mean, I don't know. Might slow down your progress a little bit, but, you know,
I think not being able to train is affecting it more.
Not being able to train affects it massively. I mean, look, someone like yourself who competes a lot, you're going to feel it more, you know, because the progress you make by typically competing almost once a month, right, is huge. But now that that's taken away from you, you know, the fact that you miss over 6 months, 6 competitions, you're going to feel that more than the student who competes maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I guess in that regard, you know, if you consider that the micro level, it's going to be a bit of an impact. But in the grand scheme of things, as the years go by, it's not going to matter. Yeah. You know, we when we're saying how it's really common between white belts to be like, oh, how long you been training?
Yeah.
Oh, 6 months. Oh, 3 months, right? Well, yeah, because at the moment your white belts, you know, 3 months, 6 months, it's a big percentage of the amount of time you've been training.
Yeah.
But once you're higher up, not even black belt, like you could be a blue, purple, brown belt, whatever. If someone's been training 6 months longer than you, you know, percentage-wise of the years that you've been training, it's so insignificant. So as time goes on, the fact that you missed the 6 comps, right, it's going to become irrelevant. But at the moment, I guess it impacts your progression.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Are you a bit cut up about not being able to compete?
Yeah, look, honestly, it is a bit disappointing. But in saying that, at the moment, say for example tomorrow, and all of a sudden all the competitions Australia-wide just opened up again. Well, because I haven't been training consistently due to, you know, restrictions, lockdown, I don't know if anyone would actually show up, and 2, if I would be, you know, prepared. Because there is an element of fitness, like cardio. Obviously, you could do stair sprints, you can do you know, sprints, runs, jogs. But
it's just not the same.
It's not the same. No, it's kind of like comparing running for cardio versus swimming. Anyone that's into swimming would know, or has
super different,
way different level of fitness. And jiu-jitsu is different again. It's you really need to do hard rolls to get fit for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And it's something that you mention all the time is your timing. If you haven't, you know, been training, you can miss even a few days or like a week of training, and then all of a sudden your timing is a little bit off, you're missing opportunities. You know, you're not going to lose like all your fitness in a week, but you're going to miss like a little bit of...
Yeah, you definitely like, it's so unfair how quick you lose, you know,
that edge.
Like that edge is the perfect way to put it, you know? So yeah, you might not lose that fitness, although a week off you do feel it, you know, but yeah, you lose just, you know, that sort of pinpoint accuracy of your timing and the way you're able to flow and connect your techniques, right? You lose that quite quickly. So that's why if I'm competing, I only take a couple of rest days, you know, I think like half a week, you know, so like maybe 4 days out from the competition, I'll take 1 or 2 rest days, but then I train the days leading up to the competition because I want to be switched on.
Yeah.
You know, I find if I have even just 1 or 2 days off, you know, my timing starts to switch off a little bit. So having now how much time off through lockdown or whatever, definitely feel your timing. Or, you know, I'm not sure for anyone who's come back from an injury, you know, ignore COVID for a second, pre-lockdown and all that. Maybe you had time off due to an injury or something, or time off, maybe not an injury. Let's say, work was slamming you or something, and you come back and you'll be mid-roll or something and you see the pass or the sweep or the submission, but it's almost like, the brain attempts to send that signal to the body to do whatever movement, and your body just goes, too late.
It's a bit sluggish. Yeah. I mean, when I competed on the injured ankle, I definitely felt that. I mean, I only did 2 matches, but it might have been just a mental barrier for me at that time. But yeah, I totally get what you mean. Yeah,
I miss seeing you compete, bro.
Superstar.
Superstar in the making. We've got a good bunch of little white belts. You, Samir, Toby. We got like a
strong.
Yeah, a good bunch of competitors, and we were just getting into a rhythm, and then this second mainly the Delta variant of COVID that's sweeping through Australia at the moment. For those unaware, our vaccine rollout has been atrocious in Australia. So hence the huge amount of cases and in and out of lockdown over and over again. I'm a bit over it. Like me as a black belt who's trained for years and owns a gym, and like I still love the sport. So okay, maybe the bug bite isn't as fresh as it is for you or for some lower belts, but I still have jiu-jitsu cravings. I'm still addicted to the sport. I remember after the first lockdown and when I went back, once the gym was allowed to open again, man, I trained in every class. Like I don't typically do that because it's exhausting to think that I'm going to teach and train in the 7 a.m. class and then teach and train at the lunch class and teach and train in the evening classes every day. Like, you can't, right?
It's intense.
I mean, I train every day, but I don't train in every class. But I remember I trained in every class once we reopened because I was frothing. I was missing it, So I was training in the 7 a.m. class, then training again at lunch. And, mid-roll, I was sort of catching myself being like, I'm having so much fun, because I love jiu-jitsu. Like as much as, I compete and it's serious and it's my job, like I enjoy rolling. Like, I mean, not only rolling. I enjoy the learning technique and drilling technique as well. But so I'm the same as everyone else. Like I'm dying to be back on the mats every day, like to be back to some normality. I want to see IBJJF competitions come back. I want to see the up and coming and current Australian high-level competitors having the ability to travel and compete again, Like it was really unfortunate when COVID first happened. It was right as Levi Jones Leary, one of the top Australian black belts out of Unity. It was right as he was, on track to become Australia's first black belt world champion, and then this just put a spanner in the works for him and a bunch of other competitors. So, me as just a student of jiu-jitsu and a fan of jiu-jitsu, I can't wait for things to get back to normal. I want to see him competing. I want to see Lockie and Craig at ADCC again, Can't wait, man. I mean, like everyone else, over it.
Super keen.
Yeah.
Super frothing.
Yeah.
Hopefully, even in Sydney, hopefully we get back to training in the next, few weeks from when this is recorded. And maybe by the time it's released, we're already training, we're on the mats.
Yeah, by the time people are listening to this, it hopefully is,
hopefully
still relevant for as an episode, but at least the part where we're not able to train is no longer relevant. I've got my family is in Byron Bay, right? Is where I grew up. It's where my mum and dad still live, and they're not in lockdown, right? So even my wife was like, oh, maybe we go up to Byron and take Atlas, our son, up there, because my mum and dad have got a nice property with horses and a swimming pool and everything like that. It's really nice for a 2-year-old to be running around. But I was like, maybe go up there, I can train, because the gyms and everything are open up there, not here.
Yeah. Well, I think that's not to leave it on a somber note, but but by the time, obviously by the time this releases, hopefully we're back on the mats, back training.
Then it's not going to be a somber note. You guys will be like, oh yeah, they weren't training, but they are now, so it's all good.
It's like a fairy tale ending to this story. But no, that was good. Just talking about I suppose the current state of affairs with COVID, what competition means for lower belts, and even what competition means for Australia in the world stage.
Yeah.
And I think it was really good to get your insight on online training, and particularly for lower belts and
I think
how to use that.
I think in the future we could dive into that a bit more.
Yes.
There's a huge.
Yeah, we're
I mean,
definitely
could
going
talk
to.
a lot about online instructionals and the amount of online learning platforms and tools, and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think he's dropping hints here.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, definitely coming soon. But for all those listening, if you stuck around for this long, thanks so much for listening to the very first episode.
Yeah, number 1 in the books.
Number 1, stay tuned. So if you're interested in all things jiu-jitsu, feel free to follow us on whatever platform you are on, and make sure to share this podcast with your friends, because it does help to support the podcast and help us grow.
Yeah, Adam and Kieren, only fans.
All right,
we
guys.
don't.
Only fans coming soon.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for listening.